Okay, hello. Greetings, everyone. Greetings, animal allies. Welcome to another AAM program designed to help you become a more knowledgeable, effective, and outspoken advocate for the animals. This interactive workshop provides you with easy to implement tools for effective communication in real life situations. We'll work with actual challenges that you as participants have experienced in the past or are experiencing now. These communication tools will help you learn to invite rather than fight, to transform situations from frustration and anger to real connection. My name is Michelle Granberg. I'm your moderator, and I'm a team member and mentor with Animal Activism Mentorship. AAM is a multinational program supporting seasoned as well as new fledgling activists. Our mission is to empower activists to reach their full potential and equip them with the tools, community, and resources they need to boldly participate in our global animal liberation movement. Founded in 2020, AAM offers a free 3-month mentorship program which pairs experienced activists with aspiring activists. Additionally, we offer free educational online programs like this one. We have a podcast called the Animal Liberation Hour, and we host large-scale in-person activism events around the country. If you're interested in applying to become a mentor or mentee or want to get involved or to donate, please visit our website, animalactivismmentorship.com. So we will take questions, as I said, but hold them for now until they're called for. And feel free to comment in the chat as you wish, but just keep your comments kind and respectful. So now it's my pleasure to introduce our presenter. Rae Sikora has been an ethical vegan and animal rights activist for 48 years. Rae has worked internationally with participants ranging from teachers, students, and prisoners to businesses and activists. As co-founder of the Institute for Humane Education, Rae created interactive critical thinking tools that are now being used by people around the globe. She is also co-founder of VegFund and Root 66, a vegan food truck turned brick-and-mortar cafe. Additionally, Rae was selected by the North American Vegetarian Society as the 2013 recipient of its Vegan Hall of Fame and is co-author of Plant Peace Daily, Everyday Outreach for People Who Care. And I will put her website in the chat. It's plantpeacedaily.org. All right, so there we have it. I will now, Rae, pass it over to you. You can unmute yourself and we'll get started.
Thank you, Michelle. Oh, I'm so grateful for AAM and all that they do. I was just telling Michelle, I became a mentor in the group recently, and I kind of thought, oh, I'm going to be a mentor, so I'm going to help this person, this mentee. And what I didn't realize was that I also would get so inspired by working with her. So that, yeah, it's kind of like, I don't know, it's given me new life in a way in some of my work, just to see somebody who is brand new to learning the information and jumping on it with full enthusiasm and wanting the information, which is just the best. As Michelle said, it's been 48 years now that I've been doing animal activism. And when I originally was vegetarian, I didn't know a single other vegetarian. That was a long time ago. When I first became vegan, which is 48 years ago, I didn't know the word vegan. So as you can imagine, I have had a lot of practice at communicating with non-vegans, hunters. Minnesota and Wisconsin is where I'm from. So hunters, dairy farmers, everybody. And from a very early age, I got to learn, like, oh, when does it work and when doesn't it work in the communication world? So I'm just going to start by giving you a little bit of background and a few ideas, and then we're going to move quickly into your most difficult situations and how to handle them. And, I'm not the world expert on how to handle this. I'm not the final word. So once we're going through your individual situations, I am completely open to others sharing their ideas as well. I really believe that, we're more than the sum of our parts when we share these things. So feel free to chime in as we're looking at those situations. So I guess I was about 18 years old when I first did an educational table for animals. And I just got this idea like, oh, everybody is going to want this information. They're going to be so happy I'm set up with my table. I was very naive, because I was so excited to learn that my choices make a difference and I could make choices that didn't support animal suffering. I thought, oh, everybody's going to want to know this. This is great. So I arranged with this mall in the Midwest, Wisconsin, of all places. I arranged with this mall that I could set up a table on the weekend and I could share all that I knew about animal issues and what was going on farms. And if people were animal lovers, how they could really change their choices to support animals. And honestly, I was so naive. I set up this beautiful table. I had literature that some of it I had to create myself because there wasn't much out there. And I had all this literature. And the first person who came up to the table pounded his fists on the table. I hate you goddamn animal people. And I was blown away. I'm like, oh, this wasn't supposed to happen. He was supposed to be really happy that I was here with the information. He said, I'm a dairy farmer and I treat my animals really well. And he was going off. And I said, oh, tell me about that. Because maybe we have more in common than you realize. He said, I'm fourth generation dairy farmer and I care about my animals. And I said, oh, what does that look like? I just kept asking him questions. And the anger that was in him, I didn't answer the anger with anger. What I did was decide, oh, I want to understand this person. I want to understand what he considers to be taking care of his animals. So I just kept talking to him and asking him. I said, oh, I asked him a lot of questions because I knew the dairy industry really well. And eventually we were just having a nice conversation. The anger drained out of him. And he stuck around. Other people came to the table and left, but he stuck around. And when he left, he had my information. He had literature in his hand and he shook my hand. It's been good to talk with you. I think he said something like, you're more reasonable than I thought you would be, or something like that. And, I was just 18. I was just a kid. And, I wasn't a mature 18 for sure. And I thought, when he walked away, I thought, what just happened there? Like, why did he stop being angry at me? And I realized in that moment that there were different ways to communicate. I could fight with people, or I could invite people into a possibility of a compassionate community, or I could do this combination of both, because I think there are situations where you need to fight. And I think there are situations where, your job is only, I picture sort of a door on people's hearts. And I think that our main job is to make sure that door doesn't slam shut. And in most cases, that means rather than fighting, to invite to just an amazing, compassionate, irresistible community of caring people. I don't know, I've just learned different tools through the years and experimented with them. And so I have discovered, even doing workshops like this, like what people's biggest challenges are. We have to deal with, we're a very small percentage of the population whose values are consistent with our choices in terms of other species and the environment. We're part of a very, very small group, percentage-wise, that is growing, but we're still tiny. And so we have to deal with family, friends, strangers, co-workers. We are dealing constantly with being the odd one out. and people not understanding why we're doing what we're doing because they're culturally trained that these are just animals or this is just food, even though it's a living being. So it's just been a slow process of learning, like what works, what doesn't work. When have I totally alienated someone who maybe would have listened to my information if I delivered it another way? Maybe not. One of my early experiences was I owned a little cabin in Wisconsin on a river. And before I bought the land, it had quite a bit of land with it. Before I bought the land, it was a popular hunting area. And when I bought it, one of the first things I did was put up legal no hunting signs. Below those, I put a sign, and each of the points, I put a sign that said, "You are welcome to walk here, to enjoy the birds, to enjoy all the wildlife, but this is their place of sanctuary. You are not allowed to kill them, but you're welcome to walk here." And I put those signs up, and the first hunting season, bam, bam, bam on my door. And this guy showed up and he was carrying his bow. He was a bow hunter. He said, "We've been hunting here since I was a little boy. You have no right to close this off to us." And I said, "Oh, you seem really angry." He said, "I am angry. You people come from the city and da da da." I said, "Well, I didn't come from the city, but," I said, "Do you want some tea? You want to sit down and talk about this?" And he was a little shocked, I think, because I didn't just yell back at him. If somebody's angry, you don't have to answer anger with anger. You get to repaint that picture any way you want, any mood you want. So with this guy, I said, "You want some tea? We can sit on the porch in the sunlight." And he said, I guess so. He's still holding his bow. And we sat on the porch and I said, I'm going to explain something to you and why I have this land posted. I planted an apple orchard on my last piece of land, and the trees grew huge, and then the deer started coming, and they got all the lower apples. And then I thought, oh boy, what am I going to do about that? I just finally I'm producing apples, and the deer are eating all the apples. They'd get on their hind legs and be eating these apples. And I thought, oh, I'll get an apple picking ladder, those 3-legged ladders, and I get the upper ones, they get the lower ones. And then one year, a buck came through. I got to recognize the deer as individuals. They didn't just look like deer to me. They became friends, and I could tell them apart, and I knew who had had babies. And then one year, this huge buck came through, and I recognized him, and he had an arrow, and the arrow was going through his body right under his spine, and his breathing was very labored. It was the most helpless feeling. And I was telling this hunter the story about this because he had said, "We're different. We're bow hunters. We're respectful. We understand the animals." So I wanted him to understand why I felt it was necessary to have one place that would protect them. So I told him the story, and I said, "I hope you understand that you have most of the state where you can kill, but this is just one place where the animals can come and know they're not in danger." And he said he did understand. And we'd see each other in town and say hi. We became almost friends, I guess, but most of it was just sharing. And I think we often come into these, like in that one, I wanted him to understand my point of view, but we often come into these interactions with the idea this person should understand in 5 minutes what took me my entire lifetime to get to, or it took me 20 years to get to, because it burns in us. Believe me, I know, 48 years of realizing what we're doing to other species. Everybody you meet, you want them to get it and get it now. We don't have time for you to process this, get it. But it took us all of our years of experiences to get to where we are. So, it took me till I was 20 years old, always calling myself an animal lover. I worked on dairy farms and I thought I love these animals. And it took me 20 years of experiences and who I happened to be exposed to, tools that I happened to come across, to open my eyes and go, wait a minute, I'm no animal lover. there's these animals and their excretions are sitting on my plate. So no matter what it took, however many years it took you to get to the point where you realized these other beings are your extended family, you have to understand that other people aren't going to get it in 5 minutes. You might be the first person they're exposed to, or the third person they're exposed to. You never know. And so one of the main tools that I have found really works great is asking questions, getting to know the other person. So we come into the situation going, you are going to understand me, rather than coming into this situation going, I want to understand you. So someone may say to you, oh, I used to be a vegetarian. You rarely hear I used to be a vegan. You do hear it though sometimes. And it always kind of startles me, like, wow, you had the information. I don't say this out loud, but I think, oh, you had the information, you acted on it at one point. What in the world happened that you suddenly are turning your back on the information? So, when someone says that to me, I generally ask, tell me the process. Like, how did that happen for you? I want to hear how it happened for you. And they'll explain sometimes they don't have a lot to explain. And then I generally ask, how does that feel? How does it feel to know the reality for the animals, but for the reasons you described, having to turn your back on them? It sounds heartbreaking. And almost every time it opens up a conversation where they're crying. They do not want to be turning their back on animals, but the culture is always pulling at you to fit in. For a lot of people, that's the issue. They aren't surrounded by community who support their choices. And so opening a dialogue like that is really, really powerful. Most people want to be understood and heard. They want their story told. There was, I don't know how many of you have heard of her. There's a woman, Fran Peavy is her name. Do you know of her? She was an amazing woman. She got a job she was, older white woman, got a job at a all-black school in Harlem and decided, wait a minute, I can't go in there unless I know their culture. So she found a family, one of the students' families, who let her live with them for the entire summer before the school year started. And then she taught at the school for a while, and then she realized, wait, there's a lot of people who want to be heard out in the world. And so she painted a huge banner, and it said, American Willing to Listen. And she got an around the world ticket and took her banner, and she spent over a year traveling around the world, and she'd go to public places and she'd unroll this huge banner, American Willing to Listen. And people would line up. In some areas, they would line up for days just to sit on a bench and tell their story to her. And it really taught her that power of understanding people, hearing people, just listening. And I think sometimes we forget that, because when we're working on animal issues, it is burning in us. We know that at this moment during this workshop, billions of animals are suffering right now. We don't have time to process, to be patient, to do any of that, but we have no choice. And I've gotten to see over the years the progress that's been made. When I was first vegan and didn't know the word, there was nothing out there in the stores food-wise for me. There was no information. I couldn't even get tofu in places. No way alternative milks. So I like to look back and see how far we've come. And it's taken everybody in all their different methods. The activists who are out there protesting, which is one of the things I like to do. I'm not just a come on, let's go meditate together person. I love being able to communicate with people who are on a completely different page than me. I find that the most satisfying. And protests for me are a way to do that. So rodeo protests and circus protests are one way to do that, where I am confronted, boom, right in my face with people who are angry. let's see, I just saw Rhonda say she needs something different. Rhonda, I want to know what you need. Put your mic on.
Thanks, Ray. I will just say, I have been volunteering full-time since 2018 to bring wolves back to Colorado. And I travel the state. I founded the Colorado Wolf Alliance. We've spoken to ranchers and trophy hunters for years, and we have done our best to communicate and to listen to them, and using the best science, especially from Adrian Trevis, who is from Wisconsin. And right now, they hate us. They're suing us now to stop reintroducing wolves into Colorado. Talking to these people doesn't work.
Right.
They say it's going to come to social tolerance in Colorado for them not to want to kill all of our wolves, even though the best science says we can coexist. And so I get really irritated when people say, just talk to them. We've been doing that for years and it doesn't work. It hasn't worked in Colorado. And what we need is something different than that.
Yes, absolutely. Great. Thank you, Rhonda. So, I think that was one of the choices I talked about in the beginning, was like either we fight or we invite, or we do a combination of both. And I think in your situation, like you've started with trying to be reasonable, it's not working. And that's the point where you fight in every way you can, legislation, every way you can. Anything you've got, then you just pull out all the stops. And I think, like there is a progression of it. And I try to think like, what is my intention here? In any of the interactions, I think, what is my intention? And I always try to go back to my intention, your original intention, Rhonda, is compassion. You have compassion for these wolves. You have a deep, compassionate heart. And if you didn't, you wouldn't be working on this at all these years. You wouldn't be working on it.
And I say, Ray, I think my biggest passion is social justice. I grew up in a family
Yes.
full of social justice. And the fact that wolves are the most persecuted animal in the world is a social justice issue. And the myths that are just rage with people, that they're vicious, they've never killed a human in the lower 48. My biggest issue as a retired nonprofit nurse is social justice. And I've gone from helping humans to helping a species that is the biggest social justice issue of my life.
Fabulous. I also grew up in a social justice family. And even when my husband and I were trying to think of what to call our organization, we were like, we ended up calling it Plant Peace Daily, because we want to be under the social justice and peace umbrella, which all animal issues are part of that. Those issues come about when people can't see the individual. They judge the entire group as a group. Oh, that's just wolves. Oh, that's just pigs. Oh, that's just people from the Middle East. Oh, this is where social justice issues come up. When we just see a group and don't see a living individual who wants the very things that we want: family, comfort, relationships, food, water, shelter, same things. So I agree with you that it is a social justice issue, and it doesn't always work to have a nice conversation about it. When it works, it's great. And when it doesn't, you move on to whatever you need to do to protect those beings. There's a lot of friction between the people who are like the humane meat movement, or get the animals better conditions, and the abolitionists. And I personally am an abolitionist. because I put myself in the position of these animals. If I was in prison and I had someone who came and said, hey, we're trying to get you better blankets so you'll be more comfortable, but I'm on death row and I haven't committed a crime, I'd be like, forget the blankets. Get me out of here. I am wrongfully imprisoned. And so this is kind of the mindset that I use when I'm working for other species. You know, I'm not going to put my efforts into making sure their conditions are wonderful. I want them to be treated with the respect that they deserve as individuals. So I do hear where you're coming from in it. And, you know, I don't even necessarily stick to legal measures when it comes to protecting other species. I do everything legal that I can. And if that doesn't work, I move right into illegal. I won't go into those specifics right now, but but you know, you do what you have to do, just as you would want people to do for you. You know, the people who were being persecuted during the Holocaust, for instance, you know, who stood up for them? You know, it was people who were willing to do illegal actions. So I do think it's important that we kind of adjust our actions for whatever the situation is. And I'm grateful that you're doing that. And the fact that these people who want to destroy the wolves hate you actually means you're being effective. You know, otherwise you would be nothing. You'd be nothing to them. So I don't know if that's any of that is at all helpful to you.
You want to add anything else, Rhonda?
I'm going to turn a light on in here.
I'm not sure right now. I'm gonna think about what she just said.
Sounds
Okay.
good. That's part of our workshop, listening, right? And digesting, processing, so.
Yeah, and if anyone else at any point, you know, whatever it is that I'm sharing, if it doesn't work for you, or
We have
sorry.
a question in the chat, a couple.
Mm-hmm.
Would you like those questions now?
Sure.
Okay. So, and again, if you want to come on camera, you can raise your hand or hit the hand raise icon. If you prefer not to, then just put your question in the chat and we'll just read it. So Silence is Violence says, it doesn't make sense to me why in society it's okay to be outraged about human rights violations, but not okay to be outraged with animal rights. Why are we animal rights activists expected to stay calm, but human rights activists not? Isn't that speciesist?
Absolutely. Absolutely. There is a cultural double standard for sure. And I don't think that we're necessarily supposed to always remain calm. I think that it's always situational. It is always like, what is going to get through to this person in this situation? What is going to be effective? And if it's most effective to be right in someone's face, then that's what we do. And that double standard of, caring about, and it's not even just caring about humans, dogs and cats. I was just in Africa for 3 weeks with every single person who called themselves an animal lover. They were there photographing like crazy, photographing the animals like crazy, and eating piles of animals at every meal. Bacon and sausage and fish and eggs. And it was so heartbreaking for me that I almost left the trip after 3 days of a 3-week trip. And I didn't choose to travel with these people. I was given this trip, and suddenly I called it visiting America. And the inconsistencies are crazy. And we all know, we've all experienced them. I sat across from a woman who was eating bacon and sausage, and she said, "Oh, Rae, you'll appreciate this. I have a bumper sticker on my car that says, 'Abuse an animal, go to jail.'" And I was shocked, because here she has this plate full of meat. And that wasn't a time when I'm like, oh, I want to understand her. No way. I said, oh, Susan, what about have someone else abuse and kill an animal for you and go to jail? And her face she said, what? I said, look down at your plate. Just look down at your plate. That's what I'm talking about. So there is this sort of tunnel vision or blind spot that people have, oh, I love my cats. I love my dog. I love little human children. We have these divisions that don't even make any sense. They're very arbitrary. So yes, cognitive dissonance is real. Was that you, Michelle?
That was me.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
it's, I grew up with it. I grew up eating meat at every meal, animal flesh, every meal, and calling myself an animal lover. I was called the animal person in our community. And then I was really little and we were at an aunt's house and there's this meat called tongue. And I was making a sandwich with it at my aunt's house. And my brother said, oh, why do you eat that stuff? It's disgusting. It's tongue. And I'm like, well, it's not tongue. And he said, no, it's tongue. I said, Mom would not feed us tongue. And I ran into the kitchen. I was just a little bug. Ran into the kitchen. I said, Mom, what's tongue? She said, it's tongue. And I'm like, what? How could you feed us a tongue? And she said, oh, I feed you lots of different parts of animals. She said that to me. And I still didn't connect. I just stopped eating tongue. But I ate all the other stuff that I was trained to think is normal, is okay. And, the culture is what it is. What we have to decide is what do we want to co-create together? And part of that is thinking about what is the most effective, like what is the most powerful in this situation. Sometimes it's just asking questions, trying to understand the person. I'll give you an example. My husband and I had a table at an environmental fair, and a woman came up and she goes, oh, I'm vegetarian, except I do eat chicken. And I said, oh, so of all the animals you could decide to eat, what made you decide that you would eat chickens? And she said, chickens. And I said, I do know chickens. So tell me, how did you decide on that animal? How did you land on that one? And she said, chickens are stupid. And I said, really? I said, tell me about your experience with chickens that lets you know that they are stupid. I want to hear about she said, well, you mean with live chickens? And I'm like, yeah, what's your experience with chickens? She said, well, I've never met a chicken. And I said, oh, I have multiple friends who also happen to be birds, chickens. Do you want to hear about them? And she's like, yeah, I guess so. And so then I told her, I said, about, this friend has rescued birds and, the chickens know their names. You call them, they come through a dog door and they jump into your arms and they want to be hugged all the time. You can't get anything done. Like I ended up making a sling and put one of the chickens who was blind, put the chicken in a sling so I could get things done. So I could free my hands to do anything else but hold chickens. But I just told her all about these different friends who are chickens and about how smart and brave and incredible they are, the best mothers around. And I said, so, you might want to rethink how you feel about chickens. And she just stared at me and she said, oh, she said, I guess I don't eat chicken anymore. Like that was it. That was all it took for her, was to hear that what she was walking around with a story in her head about was not true. It was a myth. And you never know when somebody is going to, 5 minutes before I was vegan, I wasn't. 5 minutes before I was vegetarian, I wasn't. What are those moments that were my aha moments? And those often direct me. It wasn't somebody getting angry at me. That wouldn't have worked with me. I would just shut that heart door. You know, I think of even just the whole vegetarian thing. I didn't know a vegetarian. I didn't know there was such a thing. And I walked into a leather shop with a friend, and there were like pelts hanging in the leather shop. And it got to me, and I said, "Hey, don't buy anything in here. It's dead animals." And the woman behind the counter said, "Do you eat meat?" I was 15, and my little brain, whoa, what does meat have to do with dead animals? You know, I couldn't make the connection at first. And I thought about it a little bit. And then I made the connection. It was one question she asked me: "Do you eat meat?" And then I turned to her and I said, "No, I don't." And my friend looked at me like I was crazy because I had just eaten a hot dog at the place next door. And we left this leather place, and, you know, my friend said, "Why did you lie to her?" And I said, "Oh, I didn't lie. I will never eat meat again." And all it was that one question. So I think part of it is we show up, we have to be really sensitive to what does this situation need? And be really aware of our intention and where we're coming from. You know, we're spokespeople for these other species, but we're also co-creating what we hope is a compassionate world. And it's going to look different in all these different situations. And, you know, for most people, I don't know about the group who's here, but for most people, when I say, who is your most difficult in terms of communicating about your animal activism work? Who's your biggest challenge? And almost always it's their family or their dearest friends. And that comes from our expectations. We expect that these people who we grew up with, they're smart, they're caring. How could they not want to make this connection? It's the biggest challenge. Same with our dearest friends. "Oh my God, wait a minute, you're my dearest friend." Because, you know, we're on the same page. How could you not want to know about this? It's really, I think that that's a really important element to look at, like our expectations of other people and when they should get it. I think what Rhonda was talking about, I think Rhonda had to leave. I think she's gone. Do I have that right? Wait.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, so I think, you know, like what Rhonda shared, she's not dealing with one individual. She is dealing with an entire culture, a part of the Western culture that has made wolves into the enemy and that will protect their wildlife, not protect their wildlife, protect their domestic life at all costs. All it takes is for one sheep to get killed, and an entire community then will be anti-wolf. Even though it's a rare thing, it's what happens. And so a lot of the injustices going on are, you know, wild animal conflicts where there are animals who are being kept in animal agriculture. And I saw it all over Africa, even. It's all over the world. As soon as you're raising animals and calling them food and killing them for food, then any other animals who are, that is their homeland, become the enemy. So that's what Rhonda's dealing with, and that's dealing with a whole culture. So it takes different measures, for sure. You know, you can't sit down and have a calm conversation with a rancher about wolves unless you have a one-on-one conversation with someone who trusts you and who you trust.
So
I have
there,
more.
go ahead, sorry.
No, you go ahead.
There was a discussion in the chat around Wayne Shung. Are you familiar with that, Ray? No?
Around what?
Wayne?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I figure everybody in the movement is familiar.
Petaluma.
And he went to jail for a while, just got out of jail for organizing an open rescue. He's co-founder of DXC. Do you have any thoughts on that, as I guess as it relates to communication, as it relates to what we're talking about?
Oh, for sure. For sure. Wayne is probably one of the, I would say, in my humble opinion, he's like one of the top 5 most amazing communicators in the animal rights movement. Right now, he has ended up being he's become a bit of a martyr. He's had to, not in a bad way. He's like this poster child for the injustice that's going on. So not only was he put in jail, his release, he's on probation. He is not allowed to communicate with any of his fellow activists. But what did he do the day after he got out? He went out, he leafleted. He was leafleting in Petaluma around what's going on at that duck farm. And that is, I mean, he is the most dedicated. He's incredible, but he's a beautiful communicator. He doesn't even attack. He just says the facts exactly as they are. And that's a really powerful lesson, I think, for all of us. He just states exactly what is going on without working as hard to make individuals wrong. He states what's going on. He wants to be the spokesperson for animals who are suffering behind closed doors and closed gates. And I just think that that is really incredibly powerful. And I don't know how he is as strong as he is. He's not allowed to even be with the very people who are supporting him the most right now. And he's an incredibly strong person. He's a real gift to the movement. Did someone else have a question?
Does anybody else have a question? You can raise your hand. You can unmute yourself. Since there's not so many of us, you can unmute and ask your question if you'd like to, or you're welcome to sort of put it in the chat. I was thinking while we're waiting for any other questions, Rae, for myself, I'm a fairly good communicator. It just depends. Like I'm not always across the board, and talking to non-vegans and speaking up for animals is a challenge always. But I'm not that great at thinking on my feet when it comes to outreach. I mean, I sort of am. Like, what's your tips for that? Is it just practice, 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 right? And Wayne, and you too. I mean, you seem to be great. Like you have the facts like right there in your front of your consciousness. And I'm not great at, and not that that's a flaw or it doesn't need to be a disadvantage. You have to work with wherever your strengths are, but I can't remember the facts well enough to be able to repeat them. Although there are many who say that that's not always the most compelling argument anyways, that facts don't really turn people vegan or turn people toward the animals. You can give them the facts, I guess, on a leaflet or tell them to look up a website, but it's really building relationship, right? That's like trying to build rapport and relationship. Is that?
Yes. So there are different people. There's like, some people love to hear facts. It's very rare that will open someone's heart. It may open their mind to the issues. But there are people who like to hear facts, but it's rare. Sometimes I call numbers numbers, like I separate it out, NUMB and then ERS, because most people will glaze over. So Zoe Weil, who I started the Institute for Humane Education with, she and I used to do these experiments to see, we do it with large groups of people in our workshops, to see what really got through to people. And we would do 7 different modes of learning. Which works better? Facts, storytelling, Personal stories got to everybody. That was across the board. Everybody heard personal stories, were interested in personal stories, personal experience with animals, and very few people related to the factual information. Some people were kinesthetic, but there was no other mode that everybody absorbed better than personal story sharing. Like, this is my experience. Like with the woman with the chickens, who is eating chicken, to just say, oh, do you want to hear about some of my friends? And she was like engrossed. She was really listening, and that got to her heart. And that is, from my experience, that is more effective than anything I've done. Looks like there was a question.
Yes, there is a couple of questions with all of this. So Silence is Violence says, I've been harassed at work for being vegan and progressive many times, and I've never had a way to get out of that situation because this work is where we have to remain professional. Have you been in that situation, and what do you do? So what do you do in a work setting? Change your strategy, I guess, a little bit.
Yeah, I've had, it's not easy, you know,
Yeah.
because in a way, these are not people who you chose to be with. You know, you chose the work, but you did not choose to be with these people. And what I've done, and I have had friends who have done this. I have a friend who works in a hospital in Colorado where she has, for years, she was the only vegan. And people would tease her and mock her and, you know, bordering on bullying, really. And she just decided to take the high road in it. The way she handled it was that she started bringing in lots of goodies for people, vegan goodies. She would bake cookies, she would bake, you know, just bring in food. And she would just almost ignoring their negativity around it and just bringing this in and saying, I really want to share this with you. And people started then to feel less threatened by her and started asking her more questions. Now she has a bunch of vegans who work with her, but it took years, years of her having to be patient, really, you know, and I think it's just, it's really difficult. I have, you know, even when I talk about this Africa trip I was just on, I tried every communication method I could to try and get people to stop bugging me about it and to somewhat understand where I was coming from. There were 13 people who were just eating piles of meat at every meal. And, you know, 3 days in, I was like, I think I'm going to go home, you know, of a 3-week trip. But I told the trip leader, you know, I'm considering leaving. One guy is very uncomfortable with me and he's bullying me. And I think everyone's uncomfortable with me and I think I should just leave. You know, it's not working for me. And that trip leader looked at me and he said, do not let anyone ruin your trip. So that was powerful for me just to have him say that, because I realized, oh, I get to choose what I'm focused on. You know, why am I here? I'm here for the local African people and for the wildlife. That's what I'm going to focus on. So I really turned that trip around by, I just ignored these American tourists. And the more I ignored them, the more they were asking me questions. Okay, I can say this here because they're not here. You know, there were a lot of stupid questions like, you know, where do you get your protein? And I'd say, let's see, today we saw hippos, elephants, Cape buffalo. I get my protein from the same place they do. These are like massive animals, you know. And now that I'm back home, people are a little more comfortable asking me about it. So that whole work situation where you are surrounded by people who you didn't choose them, you don't share a lifestyle, you don't share values, you've chosen to align your deepest core values of compassion for animals with your choices. You are a foreign culture to them. You're from another planet. They don't get it. And all you can do in that is keep being strong in who you are. And don't let them, like I was told, don't let them ruin your trip. If you are in work that you feel like is your passion and where you're meant to be, hold strong. Just hold strong and stay confident in who you are and why you've chosen it. You know, if you look at the people who were in the abolition movement when there was still legal slavery in the US, those people were bullied constantly. They were banned from whole cities. They were banned from work. They were like the pariah. They were considered the worst thing for the community, for the species, for the culture. And they just held strong to their work. And it's not easy. I mean, what you're talking about, going to a place every day and spending time with people who don't get you, and not only don't get you, but are probably giving you shit for how you are, that's the most challenging thing. And, when someone starts, over the years, I've had many people who give me a lot of shit for being vegan. I don't know why. Being kind is very threatening in our culture. But one thing that I have learned to do when somebody is being cruel to me about it, I turn it right back to them and I say, what would make you say that to me, knowing that it breaks my heart or knowing that it hurts me? What would make you say that to me? Explain. And that usually throws somebody off. They don't even realize how they're affecting you most of the time. So it's a really, I think trying to understand the other person is still a really powerful thing you can do. Like, oh, that really hurt that you said that. Can you tell me why my being who I am is so threatening to you? What is it about it? I want to understand. So I don't know if that helps you at all, but
I think that's great. That's definitely one of the pillars of communication, right? Asking for clarification and open-ended questions. We've all basically learned that open-ended questions are really good Socratic. David, you shared something in the chat about a story about some challenges communicating out in the world. Do you want to unmute and share that with everyone a little bit? You have to unmute.
there he is.
I don't really remember all the details, but I have it all in a file. It was all in writing. It was all in Facebook Messenger, so it was all just typing. But I go swing dancing. I take classes and go to dances every week, several days. And this guy, seems like such a nice guy, such a great guy. I mean, he's so creative. And he runs and he's going for an engineering degree, and he rebuilt an antique Model T car or something. He seems like a really great guy. He's also very faith-based. He's Christian, and I sent him so many links: christianveg.org, allcreatures.org, all-creatures.org, another Christian-based animal rights, animal education website. And he has hunted. I don't know if he's currently hunting, but he did, at least as a kid or growing up, he hunted. It was so frustrating. And I just stopped after a week or so. I mean, we went back and forth, and it seemed to be very respectful. I thought he was being reasonable. I was being reasonable in the conversation.
Mhm.
And then he would just come out with things based on his faith that were just not reasonable, in my view. I mean, as I said, it was several months ago, earlier this year. I don't remember the details, but I've got the whole conversation. So I would like someone to sit down with me. I mean, we could do it remotely, certainly. I could send a copy and we could go over it line by line. Where did I go wrong? Why was I not able to get him to see? Now, maybe that's where I went wrong right from the beginning. Where was I not able to get him to see my point of view? Maybe I wasn't seeing his point of view. So maybe that's where I went wrong right at the beginning. But line by line, because I'd like to be better at that. And I'm already thinking now, well, maybe I should sign up to be a mentee at AAM.
Hey, if
would
you
welcome that. We would love that. That's one route to go.
Yeah.
hey, if you do, I want you.
Oh, thank you.
I want
there you go. We'll
I
pair you.
want you
Yes.
so we can go over that thing line by line.
Yes. I would
I
love that.
David, I think, oh my God, obviously your passion,
Yes.
your passion for compassion is so big. And it's very hard. Like I know, because it's been 48 years for me. How can the whole world not see this? How can they not look in the eyes of these other beings and see this as a living being who deserves to live? How is that? It's impossible. If you take it now to someone who is believing a story like Christianity, whoa, it becomes even tougher, because they are not going to stray from that. You know, the people who are strongly religious, it's very hard unless there is some little door open from what they've experienced in their life. So, you know, you've probably heard this. I talk about the low-hanging fruit. And if we spend a lot of time with our intention being, oh, I'm going to make this person see the reality. Somebody who isn't even at the front door, you know, of of the information, they're around the corner, and we're like, I want you to see this, but they're around the corner. They can't even see what you're seeing. That is the perfect setup for frustration and disappointment. Like, there are people who their feet are strongly, firmly planted in a belief, and that belief dictates all their choices. They can, and you can find, of course, you know, and this is probably part of your line by line, you can find many parts of the Bible that encourage people, like Genesis 1:29, you know,
Yeah.
that encourage people to not eat animals.
Right. Right. I did. I quoted those.
Yes. And it is not,
Oh, a dog.
it is, it will not get through to someone. People look for reasons to keep doing what they're doing. There's two things that people are very afraid of. One thing that people are very afraid of is change. And the thing that people are the greatest fear for humans is being alone. If you go deeply into any fear that a human has, boom, 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 you take it down to its base fear, it is going to be the fear of being alone. And so part of why people fight change, cultural change, is I won't have any people in my life. You know, I won't have my family. I won't have my friends. I won't have my coworkers to relate to over lunch. And that is a lot of people's greatest fear. And I wish that there was a way to get to that base fear in people and help them understand. Like, I think of, like, for me and my husband, he's been vegan for 38 years, I think, or maybe more. JC, how long have you been vegan? What? How long have you been vegan? 38. Okay, I got it right. Okay, so he's been vegan 38 years, me 48. And you would think we would be the loneliest people in the world. Instead, we have this massive chosen family, we call them, of compassionate people. And we can't keep up with all of them. You know, we are far from lonely. We are like, we have such a massive vegan global community. And I wish people could understand that if you're true to your values, you are going to attract the other people who are true to your values. And don't, I don't want to order you, David, but I don't want you to waste your energy and your time with someone who is not really wanting the information. You just keep being, you're a bright light. You just keep being that bright light example. Like, that is one of the most powerful communication tools that you have. Who you are in the world can become, and probably is already for you, David. I'm pointing like you're really right over here, because that's where you are on the screen.
I'd like to be.
I wish you were.
I've seen your house. You're on Facebook. Beautiful.
Oh, yeah, we're at an Airbnb right now. So we're at a
Oh.
grandma house right now. We're not at our house. But like who you are, just as an example, that's enough right there. People getting to know you. You have super positive energy. I can tell, like you emit it right now. You know, sometimes, I think of like family. Family's the toughest, my family, I mean, they've been watching me do this work. This is my full-time work for 48 years. They know the issues. They know all the issues. And it is amazing how some family members refuse to make any connection like that and still call themselves animal lovers. But it's changed. It's taken time. I'm not a patient person, but I've had to be with this. And now we have, in the immediate family, we have a bunch of vegans, so events, anytime that like my husband and I are there and the other vegan family members are there, the events are all vegan. And so it's been a really slow progression, but I also have been able to observe like, who are the ones who are fighting it, who don't, they consider themselves into social justice, but they won't take this next step, like, social justice beyond humans. Who are the ones who aren't going there? And it's the very ones who love fitting in, who want to be normal, who don't want to be outside the box. And it sounds like it's very similar to this guy that you're talking about. He's in that box of his Christian community. He doesn't want to be the weirdo. He doesn't want to be the one who's the pioneer who says, hey, people, let's think about other species. Yeah, so anyway, that's enough on that, but I don't know if that was helpful at all.
Thank you. Thank you, Rae.
I just saw that,
Yeah.
Michelle. Vegan weirdos, that's
Yes,
awesome.
embrace your inner weirdo, inner vegan weirdo. I love it. I think we should start a club right now. We're already in the club, I'm telling you. It's awesome. Totally awesome. Oh my gosh. So I think I think someone else had their hand up a few minutes ago before David was speaking. Was it Elena? I'm not sure. Who raised your hand again if someone had.
Actually, Rae, if I may, what was that woman's response when you said, look down at your plate? What was her response?
Oh, this was kind of shocking, but they had gotten used to me, the weird vegan on the trip. And she looked down at her plate and she said, she said,
I agree.
will you just pick him up and take him? Here you go. Here's Jimmy. We have a little bit of he's a little loopy dog. She looked at me straight on. She looked right at me and said, yeah, I guess you're right. That was it.
Yeah.
No more discussion about it. But then I noticed she said, can I have your Facebook information? And she's been following and liking things on Facebook. So you never know who's like right at that tipping point and just needs a little nudge from the weirdo vegan.
Definitely. Planting seeds.
Yes, which is that's why we call it Plant Peace Daily. Sometimes you're planting these seeds and you don't get to decide or even know what they turn into. Often you're the first time somebody's hearing the information. They say people have to hear it 3 times to accept something as a possible popular idea. So maybe you're just the first one, maybe not, like, and you don't know where these things go. Like I used to do programs in schools, these humane education programs, doing critical thinking programs for high school students around how we treat other species in our culture. And there was a kid, I got some rough kids in those classes, but there was one kid, he was like, I hate goddamn animals. You know what I do to the chickens on our farm? I pick them up and I wring their necks and I pull their heads off. The kid was just going off. He was horrible, and I had to deal with him there in the class and kind of got him to calm down a bit. But he was the last time I thought this. I thought, oh, this kid's a lost cause. There's no lost cause. Sometimes the ones who react so big like that are the ones who are actually close to the tipping point and they're fighting it. They don't want to go there. So this kid, I thought, lost cause. And then 3 years later, he's out of high school now. I went with my stepdaughter to the shelter and we were thinking about getting a dog from the shelter. And I went in and I was with my stepdaughter going up and down and I saw this guy and he looked kind of familiar. He said, "Do you remember me?" And I said, "You look familiar, but I can't place it." And he said, "You came to my classroom in high school." And then I was like, "Andrew?" And he said, "Yes." I said, "What are you doing here?" He said, "I volunteer here." I said, "Wow, wow." And then he said, "Yeah, and I'm vegan." And I was like, "What?" Like the whole thing was just so shocking to me. This was my lost cause guy. And I gave him a hug. I said, "I wouldn't have imagined any of that about you." And he said, "I know." He said, "I was really bad to you that day." I said, "No, you weren't bad to me. You were just expressing yourself. It was pretty potent expression, but you were just expressing yourself." And he said, "Yeah, I'm so sorry about that." He said, "I don't know why. I just got really angry at the things you were suggesting, even though I knew it was right." And so we can't ever know like who we're facing. When I was leaving there with my stepdaughter, I said, "Hey, tell me about Andrew," to the woman who's the director of the shelter. She said, "The only regular and reliable volunteer we have, comes in many times a week, walks the dog, scoops shit, whatever it takes, he'll do it." And I'm like, I can't even believe this is the same kid. So I don't think there are any lost causes. I think humans are just a real hurting species. And, I work in the Middle East a lot. And I work with some of the most violent populations you can imagine. And I've learned a lot there that one of the main things I've learned is that we are a bunch of small children still trying to please our parents or our grandparents or whoever. And so in the Middle East, like I work with 450 teachers at a time and everything's simultaneously translated, Arabic, English, Hebrew, depending on who I'm working with. And so what I see, it's the men who are usually angry at me. And people say, "How can you work with these guys? They're so violent." And I say, that's my job there. My job is to help these adult men become adults, to stop trying to please their daddy, their grandfather, because when they're very young, there is a week of sacrifice and they are to become men. They're very young. They're like 5 to 7 years old when they first go there, and they are ordered to slit the throats of as many goats as they can to show that they're real men. They're also taught that if they abuse their sisters, their mother, and the animals, they get kudos from their father and their grandfather. So when I see these adult men, I know they grew up with that. And so I'm trying to nurture them into a place where they can be true to themselves. Stop trying to please their daddies. But I think there it's very glaring. It's very obvious. But I think that it is in all of us. We have to break out of whatever the culture has taught us is normal. And that's not easy for people. That's really tough. And so that's what you're dealing with, David, with this guy who is Christian, like that is his norm. For him to break out of that, for him to question it is really hard. I lived in Philadelphia for a while. I worked for an anti-vivisection organization. And I'd walk my dogs after work every day in this huge park. Philly has a massive park, the Wissahickon. And I would walk the dogs there, and this guy on a horse would come by every day and we'd chat. And one day, all I said to him was, "The bit in the horse's mouth looks uncomfortable." And he kind of jerked back, like I had said this horrible thing. And he said, "Why did you say that?" I said, "Well, I'm just saying it looks uncomfortable. I can't imagine it's not." And he said, "What's the work you do?" And I said, "Why?" He said, "I'm getting a feeling about what your work probably is." We had never talked about it. And I said, "Oh, I'm an animal rights activist full time." And he said, I thought so. And then he rode away. He was not happy about it. And then I can't even remember how he got my phone number, but he called me that night and he said, bring me 3 of your top books that will educate me about what your work is. I said, okay, tomorrow in the woods, I'll have them with me. Brought him 3 books. And I gave him the books. And 3 days later, he called me again. And he was crying. And I said, Brian, what's going on? And he said, my whole world has just crumbled. He's a longshoreman. Do you know what the longshoremen are? They are like tough guys, really tough. They unload the cargo ships. And, he's a tough longshoreman, horseback rider, consider himself. He said, it's like my world is chess pieces and all of them just got knocked down. I don't even know where to start. And then he said what I thought was adorable, actually. He said, like, what about pumpkin pie? That's, that was like his line. And I'm like, so you're talking about tradition. What about traditions that you have? And he said, yes, traditions. And I said, you get to create new traditions, you and your daughters. He was divorced and had 2 daughters. And I said, you get to create brand new traditions that are based in compassion. And that's exciting and it's creative and they're going to love it. And he said, I don't know, the whole family. And I said, be strong. Just be strong, happy, and creative and do it. Because you're going to want to be true to yourself now. I can tell your heart's cracked open. Be true to yourself. And within about 3 or 4 months, his ex-wife was vegan. He was vegan. His daughters were vegan. It was just such a beautiful transformation. And I had rescued a possum that had been attacked by a pack of dogs. And I had to go speak out of town. And so I was going to be gone for 4 days. And I contacted him and I said, I need a possum sitter because the possum isn't ready to be released yet. And they were delighted. Like his family became very animal conscious. He stopped riding horses, which was, I think, the hardest thing for him because he was doing it every day. But I said, why did you stop riding horses? He said, because it was a slave owner relationship. I said, okay, I guess you got it. So you just never know like who, he was so angry when I first said I was an animal rights activist. So you never know who's like right on the verge of that tipping point, but they're fighting it tooth and nail, like, well, I don't want to go. Anybody else have situations that are like, this is the most impossible situation. I don't know how to handle it.
Anybody else want to share, ask a question, talk about a situation? If someone had
Give
a-
us your
or
wisdom.
share some of our own wisdom. And I'm very inspired by Rae already because she's just reminding us, just keep talking, folks. Just talk. Like just, because you're right, you never know how it's going to land. You can't always tell. We don't want to assume, so don't overlook those opportunities to talk with kindness, with compassion as much as possible, certainly.
Yeah.
How many times it's going to take to pierce through that cognitive dissonance?
Yeah, somebody talked about, why is it okay to really come at it with force when it's about human rights, but it's not okay when it's about animal rights. And I think that's an important thing to remember because you can be in a group of people and if they're saying something racist, sexist, homophobic, anything that's human rights, it's, socially acceptable in most circles to say something. You don't let it just slide. And so I think it's really important for us to remember that animals have a voice, most people just can't hear it. So we're like the interpreters who are out there and, my husband just laughs, I can't let anything slide ever. You know, I'm always going to address it no matter what. And I'll give you a little example. This one was kind of funny. We were at that Lowe's store, the home improvement store, Lowe's, and these two people came out and they were wearing full-length fur coats. And I said to my husband, "Oh, you go in. I'll see you in a little while." And he's like, "Oh, no, no, I'm going to stay out here to witness this." And I was like, okay, you know, and I followed this couple to their car, and it had Florida plates. And the plates were those special plates that you can get for wildlife. It said "Save the Dolphins." And I was like, oh, very good. And I tapped on the window. They were in the car, and the window came down, and the guy was driving, and she was over there in their big fur coats. And I said, "Hey, I saw your license plate, and I see that you are animal lovers." "Yes, yes, we are. We're animal lovers." And I said, "Oh, great. So I want to invite you to do something." And I think they thought it was going to be a party or something. But I said, "What I want to invite you to do is the next time you are at a computer, Google the cruelty and violence that goes into fur." And their faces went like, womp, from really friendly to like, oh shit. And I said, because you are animal lovers, you will want to know what went into making your coats. I can tell you are going to want the information. And slowly he was putting the window up. But she looked right at me and she said, "I'm going to look it up." I said, "Perfect. That's all I can ask, because I know that you care." And then the window went all the way up, and I said, "Bye." And, you know, I don't know what happened after that, but a little bit of a seed I know was for sure planted. And what I wanted to speak to in them was the best part of them, because the best part of them got that license plate for dolphins and paid extra for it. That was the best part of those people. And that's who I was going to talk to, like, to tell them, I know you care. So I know you'll do this. And, you know, it's just those kinds of things that I didn't walk away feeling angry. I walked away feeling like, well, I planted a seed. I hope somebody comes along and waters it and it gets some sunshine and it grows into something. And that's all you can really hope for. You do your best. You speak what you know to be true for our extended animal family. And then, ooh, you don't get to choose what it sprouts into or when it sprouts into it.
Yeah, we tend to want like immediate gratification. Of course, who wouldn't want that? It would be nice. It would be nice, especially since it's urgent for the animals. But the truth of the matter is, 99% of the time, it's a delay. There's a long delay between. You have to think about our stories too. How quickly did we go vegan? Was it instantaneous? Not usually. Or did it take hearing it several times, seeing a lot of things? And there's this whole Buddhist thing, like, don't be attached to outcome. Like, if we can manage not to get our own sort of egos involved with, I didn't say it the right way, or it didn't happen immediately, and just drop seeds constantly. And certainly hold the faith and the intention that some of them are sinking in, but it's almost like a numbers game, they say sometimes too, right? It's sort of, right? The certain amount, there's got to be 1 out of every 100. I don't know. I like less than that, but
you know, I think it's also important to remember how strong the cultural pull is to just do what everyone's doing. It's such a strong pull. I had been vegan for many, many years, and I was bicycling in Europe, solo bicycling it ended up being about 9 months. I just went as long as my money held out. And I was bicycling all over, and here I had been vegan. I know the issues inside out. And then I was biking near the coast in Portugal, and there was a guy who was grilling tuna, and I smelled it. And I thought, oh, the justifications, without me even knowing it, these justifications came in to my head. Oh, those tuna probably had a good life until that bad last day. This is pretty innocent. This isn't a major fishing operation. All this stuff. I think I'm going to have some of that. And it was kind of, I look back on, I'm a little shocked because this is so my world, you know, but this is many years ago. And I sat down and I ate that dead tuna. And then I sat there for a moment and I thought, oh, I used to be vegan. Now I'm not vegan. It was like this weird moment. And then I thought, well, I'll have to really examine this and see, who am I? Like, can I still be consistent with my values? Who am I anymore if I did this? But the pull was really strong in the culture that I was in Portugal. It was strong. And then, you know, fate have it, this friend offered me, as soon as I got home, which was right after that event, I got back to the US, to Minnesota, and a friend offered me a free trip to Mexico if I would come be the Spanish interpreter, because I speak Spanish. And I'm like, I'm not going to turn that down. Snorkeling and, you know, all these things that I love. So I got back and went with this friend on this free trip to Mexico. And I was snorkeling in this huge area in the Yucatan, and this massive white fish, I don't know what kind of fish this was, a little scary with teeth, kept appearing, boom, right in front of my mask. And it was freaking me out. And I'm a really good swimmer, so I'd swim really fast away. Boom, this fish would appear again. And this is going to sound very woo-woo, but I'm just telling you what happened. So finally, I got so freaked out. In my head, I almost screamed, "What do you want?" And I got back loud and clear in my head, "Stop eating us." And it was so loud and clear in my head. And I said, okay, never again, never again. And that fish just swam away, just swam away. So I know it sounds super woo-woo. I'm not a big woo-woo person, but, you know, that's how it happened for me. That was my experience with it. And that's the only time I kind of fell off the wagon for a moment.
Yeah, does anybody relate to that story? Does anybody have another story to share? Otherwise, we'll wrap up in a bit. David, you have your hand up. Go ahead, unmute.
Yeah, I'll do it verbally instead of in the chat. Yeah, in 2001, I used to, before that, I had stopped eating dairy in the 1990s for health reasons, based on research that I read. And then in 2001, and I used to really like eating sardines from a can.
Oh, yeah.
And in 2001, I'm eating a sardine, and I just had this realization: this used to be a living being. And
Wow.
I don't want to eat them anymore. And I
Mm.
stopped eating them. Mhm. So,
Yeah.
and I used to like eat crab cakes. Crab cakes, I learned it's the taste. It's all the base seasoning and the flavoring.
Mm.
I don't think a crab by itself probably tastes like tofu. You know, there's not much taste to it. I love tofu, even just plain now. But yeah, so for a while, I was eating Sophie's Kitchen crab cakes and all these vegan crab cakes, high in fat, high in, you know, processed food. So I don't eat
Mm.
those anymore. And I learned it's the seasonings that makes things taste. It's not necessarily just the item itself, the animal itself, or whatever it is. Oh my God. Wow.
So I'm wondering how we can infuse your compassionate heart. How can we make it contagious to the other humans? That was my first thought.
Yeah. Yeah. I've read, I've got 2 shelves of books that I've read since 2006 about animals, animal speciesism, animal rights, veganism, all these books.
Mhm.
And I used to tell people I think there are 2 books, everyone in the world I would like them to read. One was Melanie Joy's first book, Why We
Oh,
Love
yeah.
Dogs, Eat Pigs and Wear Cows,
Mhm.
for the rational side. And for the emotional side, Jenny Brown's book, The Lucky Ones,
Oh, yeah.
My Fight for Farm Animals, is it?
Yep.
Yeah, for the other side of the brain. Now, I wanted everybody to read those two books.
Yeah. You'll
What
put
else?
those in the chat, David. That would be great.
The titles? Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, and Melanie Joy, just that paradigm shift that she created. So
Yes.
with that concept and her presentations for many years about that.
That
Yeah, her,
carnism is a
Carnism.
social a mindset,
yes.
an indoctrinated mindset that
It's a
everybody,
hidden belief system.
right,
Yeah.
right.
I would also, I'd also recommend, the films aren't new, but they're still so relevant. And you can see them free, you can share them, you can make them the signature on your email. Any of these things can be part of your signature on your email, always a good form of activism. There's a group called Tribe of Heart. And
Yes.
Tribe of Heart has, Jenny and James have made incredible films, The Witness, Peaceable Kingdom. They're incredible. So all those films are free online. I also want to let folks know before you disappear, if you go to our website, there's a free downloadable PDF of our book, Everyday Activism for People Who Care. It's an easy read. It has activist ideas for people who are introverts or extroverts, no time, a lot of time, no money, a lot of money. It has ideas for everyone on just different forms of activism, from the smallest, like, you know, I go swim laps at a pool and I put my water bottle at the end with very educational stickers on it. You know, just little things like that to big things. And you don't have to be an extrovert or people person to be speaking up for other species. And that's a really important thing to know, to honor yourself and what you're able to do and what you're comfortable doing and what has longevity for you. And only do that. You don't need to, if you're not comfortable at a protest, that's not your thing. Don't do it. You know, there's many other things you can do. Yeah, so go for that free PDF download. Don't buy it on Amazon. Just go for the free one.
On my website, I have my vegan advocacy webpage, I should say. I have a PDF, a list of 108 vegan advocacy ideas. It's a summary. Some are just one sentence, some are half a page, And I've wanted to turn that into a book since 2017, and have wanted help. I've asked for help turning that into a book. Recently played around with ChatGPT and asked it to write a one-page, first a paragraph and then a one-page, flesh it out, each idea, and it looked pretty good. So that's a project I want to do. Give credit to ChatGPT or whatever AI I use, and you know, publish that for free on Amazon.
Fantastic. Fantastic.
That's great. Love that.
I want to learn to talk better about animal rights and speciesism and veganism, starting one-to-one with people. I like Earthling Ed's style, the Socratic method, and your style, Rae, asking questions, rather than somebody like Gary Yourofsky. Different approach. Bruce Friedrich used to sometimes break into that. You know, is amazing, you know, what he used to do in talking to people. He'd be very rational and calm, like Neil Barnard, and then he'd get into this very confrontational and angry presentation just for maybe a couple of sentences. It was very interesting. You know, and then Michael Greger has his style, which is very idiosyncratic. I would like to be more, in demeanor, more like Neil Barnard, Earthling Ed. I think Joey Carbstrong is a little not my style. I also wrote, again, back in 2017, when I was attending the local, in Alexandria, Virginia, the annual animal rights national conferences,
Mhm.
2013, 15, and 17. I went. And I wrote, I work as a computer programmer. I wrote a design specifications, list of specifications for a vegan chatbot. And I tried to interest people, other developers, in creating this. Now we have AI can do that about any subject. And but I would still like to create that app, and I have the list of specifications for anybody who would like it, who might be able to help bring that into reality. And some of the parameters are it would speak, and it could grab video clips of different people from the internet and present those in answer to somebody's questions or objections. It could also, the end user could pick what style of how do you want the responses from the chatbot? Do you want them in the style of Gary Yourofsky, Neil Barnard, Emily Barwick, Rae Sikora? Is that how you pronounce your last name, Sikora? Yeah. And so, to tailor it to what kind of response a person would be most receptive to.
Yeah, I think that's a great idea, David.
Anyway, yeah,
No, those are really, really great ideas. I think he's
I'm
in
an
a
idea
place
person.
for some mentoring and
I wanna-
idea for
I'm an idea
execution,
person.
right?
I
Is that
generate ideas, but I want to put them
Yeah.
into action. I
Yeah.
want to be an
well, I
action.
think the takeaway today from that, definitely action is required, but to be yourself. If we all will just find our lane in this. So we do have another question. Amanda has her hands up. Amanda, you're still there. Do you want to unmute and ask your question for Rae?
I am still here. So it's not a question directly. And you'll probably hear my kid. She's meowing over here. Or just real quick, because in listening, I'm putting my kitchen back together. I kind of heard. I just wanted to share my vegan story real quick, because a lot of times there are people who do the divide of plant-based and vegan is for the animals. And I've lived that. I actually went plant-based for health because of the documentaries, and never intended to call myself vegan, never saw myself holding a sign on a street corner until I actually met a cow at a dairy farm. And in that moment, I met her. I'm starting to get choked up. I always get choked up when I talk about her story. When I met her, I knew what veganism was, like, for the animals. And as a feminist myself, I also, if I were in her position, what would I want? Like, how would I want someone to speak for me? And she was tag number 130. I call her Maggie. She's forever on my arm. So she's with me every day. After that, I became active, and I've done a plethora. I've been an activist for over 6 years, and have done a plethora. Some people would say probably too much, but I feel like I'm making up the first 34 years of my life. And some of the things, like when we walk away from conversations that we have, not knowing the impact that we're having on someone's life, I just want to share, in a small community that I live in Ohio, there's been several times, one particular that really draws to me. I was protesting a circus as that they were coming through town. I didn't want to move and park, so I leafleted from the first show coming out, and to be there for when the second start. I don't know if you guys can hear her. And in that time, because usually we leave when the show starts, in that time, I had so many people come up to me saying that they saw our sign on the way in, and it really made them think about the animals in that situation while they were there. And I've actually become a really big advocate for solo activism too, because sometimes I've had to do it, because if I'm not there, then who else is going to be there for the animals? And I'm was drawn, I've actually, as a mentor, I do multi-day events as well in my state, and just trying to inspire and help people find their niche. Just like we've heard in the conversation, find what calls to you and do it. And I find multiple forms of activism very productive. I'm a big advocate for cubes of truth. I enjoy having those Socratic conversations with people as they're watching footage. And I'm our local organizer here. But I also do protests and with mentoring, getting people to figure it out. Like what they're right now, my current mentee actually doesn't have a goal, but he's already organized his first event and he's doing all of these things, all while after having surgery and kind of being down still. So it's really phenomenal once someone gets inspired what they can do, just like my own story. Like, how could I get active and where do I start? And that's where I love AAM so much too, because they kind of give you that focal point and can point you in the right direction, because some people have been there. And then we all have our own little niches that we can help with too. But I just kind of wanted to share that story, and just anyone who wants to get active, just go. Holding a sign. Sometimes you get the really ridiculous comments. Just try to have it like water and oil and just roll off, and just be there for the animals, because if we're not, who will be? So thank you. And thank you so much, Rae. Really appreciate all the information that you've mentioned. I really want to be one of those people that don't get so hot under the collar sometimes with with the ridiculous things. So I'm inspired. Thank you so much for taking.
Oh, thank you, Amanda. Thank you so much. And thank you for your story. Like,
Thank you,
I
Amanda.
just think it's so powerful to share our stories. And, you know, I think that, well, I should take you, if you don't want to get so hot under the collar, I should take you with me to the Middle East. Those people will train you in real fast. You know, you're being threatened, like they want to kill you and all this stuff. And, you know, I've learned to not take anything personally there. So yeah, I just really appreciate hearing everybody's stories and what they're doing. And just like Amanda said, just like find what you have, like what you love doing, what you're good at doing. You know what you're good at doing. Most people do. And just do it. Just do it. You know, even like the solo thing that you did, Amanda, at the circus. Like we've had it where, oh, we have a circus protest. Oh, nobody showed up. You know, it'll be me or me and my husband. And we've had people stop who are going into the circus and instead park and join us in the protest. So you just never know the effect that you're going to have. You know, sometimes it's just a little tweak in people's day and it's enough to turn them around.
You don't know where someone's aha moment is going to come, what it will be, when it could be right then. And you may never know, you know, because we don't follow them, you know, from there. And so it's good that we're sharing all of these really amazing stories that keep us hopeful, you know, in all this as well. So yeah, so thank you everybody so much for everything that you have shared, and there's some good resources in the chat here. But I know we're gonna have to wrap up. I mean, at some point or in a moment or two. So Elena said this is her first time joining us. One of our AAM workshops. Thank you very much. You know, visit our website, and the application for signing up to be a mentor mentee is there on the website. Rae, do you want to, before I'll wrap up after you, but do you have any final sort of words of hope? I always like to ask people, put people on the spot when there is like, when do you think we'll have a vegan world? In our lifetime? The answer is yes.
Well, I think it's inevitable eventually. Well, okay, there's two ways it could go. Either humans will disappear off the planet because of our own actions, and then things will just get into a natural balance. And believe it or not, that's my happy story. That's my hopeful, happy story, is that this place can just like come back into balance. In the meantime, I think it's going to come to that point. Like, look at all these major companies who are like even Kraft Foods, who was like Dairy City. These companies are now going, oh, wait a minute, we better get on that vegan wagon if we want to keep making money. They see the writing on the wall, and they're just about money. Of course, they're not about compassion, but it's still a sign to me. It's very hopeful. Like, even, when I was first vegan, there wasn't anything. You would buy dry soybeans and bring them home and boil them to make soy milk. It's just like ridiculous. And now my husband says, oh, could you pick up some ice cream when you're at the grocery? And I'm like, what kind? There's like 300 kinds. So, just that gives me hope. Like, things have come a long, long way, certainly in the last 48 years since I went vegan. And now everybody knows the word. I was in rural Africa at these different game preserves, and the staff, they were amazing. They made me gourmet vegan meals at each one. And they'd be like, oh, you're our vegan. And I'd say, yep. And they'd say, you let us know if you're not getting enough food or it's not up to par. And they'd be like, okay, this is rural Africa. So I just think that that's very, very hopeful. And yeah, we just have to keep being the beautiful interpreters for our big family, because they're suffering right now. And we just have to do whatever is in our hearts. And I think, David, you are going to be a superstar in this movement. Let's figure it out together. You are. Yes, you have just who you are. You have a credibility to you. You're going to make some major change. So I'm looking forward to seeing that for sure. And Michelle, if you could share how we can, because I didn't get to watch the chat as we were having the workshop, so I'd like to see what people posted on the chat. If you can share that, that would be great. And I just want to say to those of you who came, and there'll be other folks, this is recorded, so there'll be other folks watching it later, that, I mean, it makes me want to cry. I'm so grateful to not be alone in this life of choosing compassion. Like, I'm really grateful for all of you, that you not only did you witness what was going on, but you really made your lives examples of what can be. And so you're my co-creators. I'm very, very grateful for you.
Thank you. I mean, I continue to be just floored by our community and how amazing the people I've met. I can't, they're the best. They're absolutely just the best. So thank you, Rae, for what you shared. Hold on, everybody. If you have another moment or minute or two, let me just a couple of announcements and wrapping up here.
Is there a way to save the chat? In other Zooms, I've been able to save it. I don't see a button here, and I can't even copy it. I highlighted everything, and
I don't know. I don't know if that's enabled.
Yeah.
For us, I don't know if that's something that would have been needed to be done in the settings. That wasn't done in the settings. But I can, if you want to, David, if you want to, privately here in the chat, give me your email address. I think I can just get the chat file from the back end and I can send it to you at least. And to Rae as well. If people want it, you can share your email with me if that's okay. And if it's okay with everyone, we'll share that. Okay.
That's public.
Okay, so now everyone has your email, so everyone can email David.
Yeah, sure.
Happy vegan day.
Happy to.
Okay, so I want to announce our next program on January 4th. We have ethical veganism as activism. That will be with Natalie Fulton, another one of our wonderful mentors. And in January 25th, actually, Amanda is going to be doing a workshop on infighting. We're still getting that posted and going to be promoting that soon as well. So that's going to be an important workshop with Amanda. And as I said, please check out all our previous workshops are archived on our YouTube channel. And while you're there, please subscribe. Please subscribe and hit the bell so you'll be notified of all our new content, and follow us on social media. And Rae, someone was asking if you're on Instagram, or any other, if you can put that in the chat.
I'm on everything.
Good. Put that in the chat as well so folks can follow you. And I will take everybody's email after this and make sure you're on our email list. Make sure you get the chat. Please consider becoming a patron by finding AAM on Patreon. Your donations allow AAM to continue to provide free educational resources for activists, which ultimately saves more animals. And that wraps up another AAM workshop. Thank you, Rae, again for your time and wisdom so much. Thank you all for being here and the tireless work that each and every one of you are doing for the animals. You all make a difference. You all make an impact. Please don't doubt that. Again, if you're interested in becoming a mentor or mentee or want to get involved, please reach out to us. And until next time, stay strong and live vegan, everyone. Thank you so much.